Welcome everybody to the second key to learning English, or any language for that matter. In the first key, we explored the importance of listening to a lot of authentic content in English. Today, we're going to look at another rule which is equally important, and that is the importance of repetition. Even if you already understand a lot of English, even if you understand most of what is said, listening to the same content repeatedly can make an enormous difference. And honestly, this is a new tool I've only recently discovered and recently applied to my Italian learning. I wish I had implemented it earlier, but honestly, I'm the type of person who reads or watches something once and then I'm quickly on to the next thing. In fact, I actually avoid watching or reading the same thing twice because I used to view it as a waste of time. Boy, was I wrong. So let's look together at why the concept of repetition is so important, and then I'll address the same exact question I had, namely, isn't it too boring to hear the same thing again and again? First of all, every expert in any field, and certainly any skilled athlete, became so skilled in large part because of repetition. In fact, the thing that separates high-level athletes from amateurs is the amount of repetition they do. Every time I go to the gym, it's the same concept. I repeat the same movements a certain amount of time to give my muscles the exact practice they need to grow. And of course, the exact same concept applies with learning English. When you're listening to something in English, you will often encounter words or phrases you don't know yet or haven't added to your active vocabulary. This is totally normal and is exactly the reason why you're listening to me now. To help your brain make these words and expressions its own, it needs to listen to them repeatedly. But instead of just memorizing lists of vocabulary or repeating them 100 times like a parrot, in this phase of learning, you just need to relax and listen many times to the same videos and other audio content. In fact, if you like this video, you could start with this. Depending on how much you like a video or audio content, you can listen to it 5, 10, or even 30 times. It's your choice. The key is repetition, which allows your brain to truly absorb the language. Now, many of you might be thinking, but how am I supposed to listen to the same thing 10 times? Well, as I said in the first key, if you select content where you only understand 20%, you could listen to it 100 times and it still wouldn't help. Without comprehension or true understanding, you won't learn new vocabulary words or grammar structures. Like I already said, you don't have to understand every single word, but if you at least understand the general sense, when you encounter a word or phrase you don't know, you will understand because of context and also through repetition. So what do you do if you don't understand at least 70 to 80% of a video or audio file? My advice would be to watch it with the subtitles or a transcript, if available, which will train your comprehension and allow you to progress. This is exactly what I did with French and now with Italian, and it allowed me to start watching YouTube videos like this one after just a few weeks of learning Italian. After a while, as you improve, you can watch the videos without subtitles and without the transcription, and you'll be amazed at how your brain is absorbing the language and all of it becomes so much easier. In all my videos, I'll provide subtitles, and you can find the transcript to my videos on my website, whose link I will put in the description. Now, many are probably still thinking, how can I watch the same video 20 times? How boring! The key here is selecting the right video and content. I'll give you a simple example. Do you get tired of your favorite song after hearing it 10 times? Obviously not. In fact, we listen to our favorite songs hundreds of times without thinking about it. In all my videos, I try to make them interesting and full of real-world English and useful phrases. But most of all, I try to make them interesting. As I learned the same way in German, French, and most recently Italian, I know very well what a learner needs to stay motivated and interested. If I can help you out in your English learning journey in a positive way, this would please me enormously. However, I'm aware that if you select the wrong material, it can be painfully boring. In fact, the texts and audio files they produce in a lot of Learn English textbooks and other traditional foreign language courses are impossible to listen to more than once. This content consists of lifeless phrases and stiff, forced conversation that in no way resembles real life. So you often get phrases like, "Hello, Mr. Adams, how are you?" "Oh, I'm fine, Mrs. Smith, thank you. How are you?" "Fine, thank you. Where should we go to eat?" Etc. Luckily, about 3 years ago, I found the podcast that forever changed my life. I was 6 months into learning French, and having already more or less mastered German, I knew that reading helped a lot. So with the aid of Duolingo to learn the basics and some graded readers, I reached a point in French where I started listening to the podcasts available on Duolingo. It's kind of funny to think about now, but these Duolingo podcasts were not that serious. Don't get me wrong, they were made really well and were interesting. That wasn't the problem at all. But they spoke English, my mother tongue, about 3/4 of the time, leaving about 1/4 of the time for real comprehension practice for my brain. But I didn't know better back then, and it helped me enough so that I tried another podcast called Inner French. He spoke a bit slower and chose learner-friendly vocabulary. And I still remember in the first episode when he said, "If you understand most of what I'm saying, then you already have an intermediate level of French." I was really surprised that I had such a high level. But the thing he did that so revolutionized my language learning was that he didn't talk about grammar or phrases that French speakers use. No, he talked about super interesting subjects I would have found interesting in my own language. And then, through context, I learned words I didn't know before. He was still a language teacher, and so explained some idioms and important vocabulary words. But the subject was always the main part. In any case, I saw how much I was improving, how enjoyable it was, and I just started listening to more and more Inner French podcasts. In fact, I enjoyed it so much, I want to give back to all those people who hated learning English in school because these poor souls were taught in these old school, ineffective, miserable methods. But back to our second key, the importance of repetition. The power of repetition is you can learn vocabulary and also grammar unconsciously without having to study it deliberately. Through the context and through understanding the main idea, your brain is being exposed to all sorts of grammar and vocabulary, and it is learning structures. At the beginning, if you're new to this, it does require some trust in the brain. But if you stick with the daily process, you'll soon discover for yourself how effective this is, and you won't waste any more time with vocabulary lists or grammar worksheets. Our brains are truly powerful machines and are hardwired for languages. As long as we feed it the content it needs, the brain will automatically start to work out rules and will have more contexts from which to draw upon. This is exactly what you do in your first language, by the way. Think about it. If you wonder if a phrase is grammatically correct, do you go through the textbook rules in your head? Okay, maybe you write ChatGPT these days, but most of us think about what sounds right. In other words, you draw on all the thousands of references you have through all the content you hear, and in this way, determine what is right. One more thing to talk about before I end the second key. The first concept, listening to a lot of authentic English content that you enjoy and want to understand, will not only help those who want to comprehend more English, it will actually help those type of English students who understand almost anything or everything in English, but still have problems with speaking. Believe it or not, hearing a lot of spoken English and repeating it several times will help you next time it's your turn to speak. I'll talk more about this another time, but for now, let's end. So remember, listen to a lot of English about subjects that interest you. Honestly, at the intermediate stage of English, watching a Netflix series or any other platform will not be that effective because there's a lot of idiomatic expressions and it's a lot harder to understand unknown words because the context isn't as clear as in one of my videos, for example. I try my best to create content super useful for intermediate users with content that is interesting with authentic English, but at a level more tailored for learners than for native English speakers. If these videos are helpful for you, you can support this channel by liking the video or subscribing. It really helps other learners find this content. And if you feel like it, leave a comment. I read them and it helps me know what kind of content is most useful for you. Before you move on, remember, listen to English you understand, listen to it more than once, and do a little every day, relaxed and without stress.